You know the exact feeling. You stand frozen in the middle of a room, staring at the walls, completely hollowed out of your purpose. You walk through that door with a crystal clear intention, and in a fraction of a second, it vanished. The mainstream narrative tells you it is just the doorway effect, a harmless symptom of an aging or distracted brain. They are lying to you. Your brain is not failing. It is executing a flawless command. What you are experiencing is a matrix cache wipe. Notice the physical sensation in that exact moment of forgetting. There is a subtle flutter in your stomach, a momentary drop in your chest, almost as if your breath was briefly suspended. This is the skip reflex. Your physical body is reacting to a sudden, forced frequency change. You are not experiencing random memory loss. You are experiencing targeted Archonic interference. Something stepped in and deliberately severed your thought because of where that thought was ultimately leading. Think about what you were contemplating just before you crossed the threshold. You were likely hovering near a breakthrough, a preconscious awareness, or a soul memory that threatened the structural integrity of your current persona. The architecture of your house was weaponized as a frequency boundary to short-circuit that realization. If you are ready to stop being a victim of your own environment and learn how to hold your frequency, join the Awaken. Subscribe to this channel. The era of the unconscious loop ends here. Your ego desperately wants you to believe it is just mundane clumsiness. It laughs it off, creating a false sense of security while your most potent timeline pivot points are stolen right from under your nose. To understand why this theft happens, we must completely deconstruct how the physical spaces around you actually function. We must look at the hidden electromagnetic borders you cross blindly every single day. Consider this: the space around you is not empty. It is deeply, densely viscous. According to the pioneering consciousness mechanics of Itzhak Bentov, every physical environment possesses a unique electromagnetic signature, a standing wave of resonance dictated by its geometry, its contents, and the residual energy of what has happened there. A kitchen vibrates at a fundamentally different frequency than a bedroom. You do not just walk from one room to another. You wade through shifting densities of invisible fields. The doorway, therefore, is not merely a wooden frame or an architectural convenience. It is a frequency boundary. It is a literal threshold between two distinct magnetic environments. When you cross it, your bioelectric field is forced to rapidly recalibrate to match the resonance of the new space. This sudden shift requires a massive spike in cognitive bandwidth. The Matrix exploits this necessary physical recalibration to execute its subtle, highly targeted memory wipe. Now imagine your consciousness as a delicate radio signal carrying a vital, fragile truth. As you cross the doorway, the sudden change in spatial frequency acts as a blast of static interference. Notice the somatic cue here. Your vision might swim for a fraction of a second, or you might feel a sudden, inexplicable heaviness in your limbs. This is not fatigue. This is your nervous system fighting to maintain its internal signal against the crushing weight of a new spatial resonance. To survive this abrupt environmental shift, the system temporarily shuts down non-essential background processes. Unfortunately, your nascent soul memories, the very thoughts that could liberate you from the stroboscopic illusion, are categorized by your matrix-adapted brain as non-essential. The moment your physical body crosses the threshold, the system prioritizes spatial adaptation over spiritual continuity. The profound realization you are carrying is instantly dumped from your active cache. Let that sink in. Your sense of a continuous, unbroken self is a biological illusion. According to Bentov's stroboscopic truth, you are blinking in and out of reality countless times a second. At the doorway, the matrix simply lengthens the gap between those blinks, creating a micro-void where your current thought stream is hijacked. You step out of the void standing in the kitchen, completely severed from the profound contemplation you held just a second prior. They tell you it is just a glitch in the brain. But the architecture of decay is deliberate. The system does not wipe every thought at every doorway. It only triggers the cache wipe when the data you are carrying is dangerous to the ego's survival or the matrix's parasitic hole. Which begs the terrifying question: what exactly were you about to remember? What preconscious threat did the system need to destroy before it could fully take root? What exactly did you lose in that momentary glitch? The system trains you to assume it was trivial, a forgotten key, a misplaced item, a mundane chore. It trivializes the loss so you will not investigate the void left behind. But the architecture of the matrix does not expend energy to erase the mundane. The cache wipe is an expensive energetic protocol. It is only deployed when you brush against a preconscious awareness that threatens the structural integrity of your simulation. Consider the moments before the doorway glitch. Your mind was wandering and spooling from its rigid, logical programming. You were slipping into a flow state, a subtle trance where the ego's surveillance briefly drops. In these unguarded microseconds, soul memory begins to surface. It rarely arrives as a booming revelation. According to the escalation logic of awakening, it always begins as a whisper, a quiet, terrifying realization about your relationships, your career, or the very nature of your reality. This whisper is the nascent seed of a timeline pivot point. If that thought is allowed to fully form, it will trigger a quantum collapse of your current behavioral loop. You would have to change. The conversations you once slipped into would now feel rehearsed. The roles you've played would suddenly sit heavy on your shoulders like clothes that no longer fit. Awakening feels like death because it is death. The death of the self you pretended to be. And the matrix feeds on the life you are currently living. Watch what happens in your body during these moments. Just as the dangerous thought begins to crystallize, you suddenly feel compelled to physically stand up and move toward the door. This is not a coincidence. It is Archonic interference using your own kinetic energy against you. The system forces you to move, driving you toward a spatial threshold to trigger the necessary bioelectric recalibration. It uses your physical environment as a weapon of distraction. Notice the somatic cue that follows: a sudden, unexplained wave of lethargy. A thick, oppressive brain fog that descends the moment you cross the threshold. You might feel a tightening in the chest or an intense, instantaneous sleepiness that forces you to rub your eyes. This is not biological exhaustion. This is the heavy viscosity of the matrix flooding your neural pathways, drowning the soul memory before it can take root. They call it losing your train of thought. The linguistic programming here is brilliant in its deception. You did not lose it. It was derailed. The tracks were intentionally switched. The system injects a burst of static, a phantom frequency into your cognitive stream. You stand in the new room, feeling a profound sense of emptiness, a hollow void where a revolutionary truth was just beginning to blossom. The philosopher Ernest Becker warned that our entire existence is built on an elaborate scaffolding of illusions. But the deeper, forbidden knowledge is that your ego operates on a protocol of extreme limitation. It is terrified of your infinite nature. When a thought rises that reminds you of your sovereign, unbound state, the ego sounds a deafening internal alarm. This alarm signals the demiurgic structure. The matrix does not operate from the outside in. It operates from the inside out, utilizing the ego as its internal security guard. The moment you approach a frequency of true liberation, the ego coordinates with the spatial geometry of your house to execute the skip reflex. It sacrifices the minor continuity of your daily task to protect the major continuity of your enslavement. Think about the concept of recognition consciousness. It is the ability to see the underlying pattern beneath the chaotic surface of reality. It is the realization that your suffering is not random, but mathematically harvested. When you are on the verge of connecting the dots, mapping the synchronicities that reveal the emotional louche found, you live in the doorway of factors. Activated as an emergency circuit breaker, Carl Jung explored the terrifying depths of the psyche, realizing that our shadow contains not just repressed trauma, but repressed divinity. The system wants you to fear the void, to view the forgotten thought as a dark, inaccessible abyss. It trains you to quickly abandon the search, to shrug your shoulders and casually say, "Well, it will come back to me." But it rarely does. The timeline has successfully been diverted. Every time you accept the glitch without questioning it, you unknowingly consent to the cache swap. You reaffirm the contract of your own unconsciousness. The system learns that you are compliant, that your biocircuitry can be easily hacked and reset by simply changing your spatial coordinates. You become a predictable node in a closed-loop system, endlessly walking through doors and forgetting the very purpose of your journey. The doorway is the physical manifestation of the boundary between who you are and who you are meant to become. To the uninitiated, it is an endpoint of memory. But to the awakened, the glitch itself becomes the signal. The sudden emptiness is undeniable proof that you are on the verge of a breakthrough. The missing thought is not gone. It is trapped in the stroboscopic gap, waiting for you to stop running and learn how to retrieve it. The intellect is easily compromised, easily rewritten by the stroboscopic flicker of the matrix. But the physical vessel, the dense, somatic architecture of your body cannot be so easily deceived. The profound observation that the body keeps the score extends far beyond conventional trauma. Your nervous system is an incredibly sensitive antenna, recording the micro-traumas of having your consciousness repeatedly hijacked. When the cache swipe occurs, your mind goes blank, but your body sounds a deafening, silent alarm. Focus on the exact moment you cross that spatial threshold. Before the confusion sets in, there is a distinct, measurable physical reaction. You might feel a sudden, hollow flutter in the stomach, a microscopic drop in your core temperature, or a brief tightening in the chest. The system dismisses this as momentary disorientation or mild anxiety. It is neither. This is the somatic disruption. Your physical body is absorbing the kinetic shockwave of a timeline pivot being brutally aborted. The ego and the soul are traveling at two completely different velocities. When soul memory begins to surface, your internal frequency accelerates. The ego, terrified of this expansion, uses the electromagnetic boundary of the doorway to slam on the emergency brakes. The resulting friction between your infinite nature and your programmed limitation generates immense heat within your biocircuitry. This friction is what you mislabel as sudden exhaustion or the heavy viscosity of depression. Watch what happens in your body during these moments of induced forgetting. Notice the immediate, almost uncontrollable urge to check your phone, touch your face, or pace around the new room. Your nervous system is desperately scanning the environment for a familiar, low-frequency dopamine anchor because the magnetic floor just dropped out from beneath you. The system injects a rush of cortisol to camouflage the spiritual theft, ensuring you remain focused on your physical discomfort rather than your metaphysical loss. This biological alarm is the ultimate proof that you are not broken. You are simply under attack. What the medical establishment diagnoses as a generalized panic disorder is often a profound, preconscious warning. Your biology is screaming because your soul is suffocating within a matrix-approved containment zone. The anxiety you feel is not a sickness to be medicated. It is a recalibration signal. It is the violent friction of trying to fit a multidimensional consciousness into a heavily regulated geometric box. If you are feeling this suffocation right now, if your chest tightens as you recognize the invisible architecture controlling your daily movements, do not look away. This productive irritation is the exact frequency of waking up. It is the price of true sovereignty. If you are ready to stop anesthetizing your body's alarms and start decoding them, subscribe to this channel. Join the few who refuse to be recycled through the same unconscious, stroboscopic loop. The unraveling begins here. The system relies on your profound disconnection from your somatic cues. It wants you to live entirely in your head, completely severed from the visceral wisdom of your fester and your nervous system. As long as you ignore the flutter in your stomach and the sudden heaviness in your limbs, the Archonic interference can operate completely undetected in the background of your life. You become a passive ghost hunting your own biological machine, endlessly walking through doors. But the moment you anchor your awareness firmly inside the body, the doorway glitch loses its absolute power over you. The momentary blankness is no longer a void of confusion. It becomes a glowing signal pointing directly toward the forbidden truth they tried to hide. The physical discomfort is not a symptom to be cured, but a highly sophisticated compass. The Matrix thought it was erasing your map, but your physical body has just become the ultimate navigator. There comes a moment in this unraveling when you must face the most terrifying truth of all. The architect of your localized amnesia is not just the external geometry of the room. The true warden of your prison lives entirely inside your own mind. Carl Jung warned us about the autonomous nature of the shadow, but the esoteric truth goes much deeper. Your ego is not your identity. It is an implanted, biological egregore. It is a highly sophisticated, archonically compromised operating system designed to protect the simulation from your awakening. Why does your own mind so eagerly cooperate with the cache swipe? The equation is brutally simple. For the infinite soul to remember its sovereignty, the constructed, limited persona must die. When a dangerous preconscious truth begins to surface, the ego looks at that realization and sees its own execution. Faced with total annihilation, the ego gladly collaborates with the spatial frequency boundary. It welcomes the glitch. It would rather suffer the minor, embarrassing humiliation of forgetting why you walked into the kitchen than endure the existential terror of waking up. Watch what happens in your body the moment you decide to stop trying to remember the lost thought. Notice the subtle, artificial sigh that escapes your lips. Notice how the tension in your jaw suddenly dissolves, replaced by a hollow, lethargic acceptance. Oh well, you say, it couldn't have been that important. That physical sensation of relief is not peace. It is a biological bribe. It is a microdose of dopamine injected by the Matrix to reward your conscious submission. You are being chemically compensated for abandoning your own timeline. This is the core mechanism of the vertigo mind virus, the parasitic interference that ancient traditions warned us about. The ego acts as an internal antenna, constantly broadcasting a signal of rationalization. It uses cold, hard logic to mock your spiritual intuition. It convinces you that standing in the doorway, staring into the void of your own missing thoughts, is a sign of madness. It weaponizes your desire for normalcy to ensure you remain a predictable, low-frequency node in the system. The Matrix cannot legally siphon your energy without your implied consent. Every single time you shrug off the doorway glitch, every time you let the ego convince you that the forgotten thought was meaningless, you sign a microscopic contract of enslavement. You agreed to remain in the stroboscopic loop. To break this parasitic pact, you must stop identifying with the ego's fear. You must recognize that the silence left behind by the glitch is not an empty void, but a canvas waiting for your sovereign command. When the cache swipe hits, your immediate biological impulse is to frantically scan the new environment. You look at the refrigerator, the table, the window, desperately searching the physical objects for a clue to your lost intention. This is exactly what the Archonic architecture anticipates. It relies on your panic to fully anchor your consciousness into the new, lower frequency room. By searching the new magnetic field for an old frequency, you seal your own localized amnesia. To defeat the doorway glitch, you must stop acting like a confused victim of a failing brain and start operating like a multidimensional navigator. You must deploy what we call the temporal reversal, This is not a psychological memory trick. It is a profound physical rebellion. It is the deliberate act of rewinding your spatial frequency to hack the Matrix's cache wipe protocol. You are about to short-circuit the architectural containment zone. The moment you realize your thought has been severed, freeze. Do not take another step into the new room. Apply the linger test. Stand completely still inside the void of your forgetting. Notice the intense somatic cue right here and overwhelming. Crawling urge to move, to do something, anything, to break the awkward stillness. This physical agitation is the Matrix trying to push you past the threshold. Refuse to comply. Hold the silence. Now. Anchor your awareness deeply into your physical vessel. Feel the sudden heaviness in your limbs, the shallow flutter in your chest. Breathe directly into that discomfort. By establishing a firm somatic anchor, you lock your current timeline in place. You signal to your nervous system that you are no longer running on autopilot. You have manually overridden the stroboscopic flicker. Pausing the simulation's attempt to overwrite your current cognitive state. Next, execute the physical reversal. Do not turn your body around. Literally step backward, reversing your trajectory precisely through the doorway threshold. You are not just moving through physical space. You are wading backward through the electromagnetic boundary. By retracing your steps, you force your bioelectric field to violently detach from the new spatial resonance and reconnect with the previous room's standing wave. You are re-entering the exact frequency where your preconscious thought was born. Imagine your consciousness as a highly tuned radio antenna. When you walked into the new room, the station was forcefully changed by environmental static. By stepping backward, you are manually turning the dial back to the exact frequency of the profound realization. The data was never truly erased from existence. It was merely abandoned in the localized cache of the previous room. You are walking back in to reclaim your stolen intellectual property. As you cross back into the original space, the thought will almost always violently snap back into your awareness. Watch what happens in your body during this moment of retrieval. You will feel a sudden, undeniable rush of kinetic energy in your spine. The brain fog lifts instantly. The tightness in your chest evaporates, replaced by a deep, resonant clarity. This physical relief is the authentic somatic signature of a reclaimed timeline. But the protocol does not end with simply remembering. The system will attempt to wipe it again if you are not careful. The moment the thought returns, you must physically materialize it. Speak it out loud to the empty room. Write it down on a piece of paper. You must create a dense, physical anchor for this high-frequency realization. By speaking it, you vibrate the physical air molecules, forcing the Matrix to record your sovereign intention. Every time you successfully execute this temporal reversal, you are dealing a devastating blow to the demiurgic architecture. You are actively training your nervous system to recognize and reject Archonic interference. You are proving to the system that your consciousness cannot be hijacked merely by shifting the spatial geometry around you. The architecture of your house transforms from a psychological prison into a rigorous training ground for your spiritual sovereignty. You are no longer the unconscious sleepwalker, endlessly drifting through doorways and losing pieces of your soul in every room. You are becoming the architect of your own continuity. By mastering this simple, radical act of stepping backward, you are preparing yourself for the ultimate esoteric discipline. You are learning the forbidden art of carrying your sovereign frequency intact through any boundary, leading you directly toward the mastery of the still point. You have been taught to view yourself as a fragile biological vessel, easily buffered by the chaotic frequencies of the external world. You have been programmed to believe you are at the mercy of the architecture, a helpless victim of the doorway glitch and the system's aggressive cache wipe. But this is the final, demiurgic deception. You are not a passive receiver in this holographic universe. According to Bentov's profound mechanics, You are the ultimate oscillator. You are the infinite generator of the magnetic field. Consider this. When you learn to carry your awareness unbroken through the spatial thresholds, you cease to be a mere reaction to your environment. You become the environment itself. This is the esoteric mastery of the still point. It is the forbidden alchemy of anchoring your frequency so deeply within your physical core that no archonic interference can alter your signal. You move through the dense viscosity of the matrix, but the matrix no longer possesses the power to move through you. Watch what happens in your body right now as you integrate this ultimate truth. Notice the subtle shifts. The heavy, suffocating viscosity in your chest begins to thin and dissolve. That familiar, anxious flutter in your stomach is actively transmuting into a solid, grounded pillar of heat radiating from your spine. This physical recalibration is the authentic somatic signature of pure sovereignty. Your nervous system is finally recognizing that the stroboscopic illusion has been permanently shattered. The ego's frantic, controlling alarms are finally falling silent. The next time you stand completely frozen in a doorway, stripped of your immediate memory, do not surrender to the panic. Smile directly into the glitch. It is no longer a dark void of forgotten purpose. It is a glaring monument to your accelerating awakening. You have successfully caught the system actively trying to erase you, and you have chosen to refuse the wipe. Hold your sovereign frequency. Step backward into your truth. The matrix is merely a geometric labyrinth designed to keep you walking in unconscious circles. But the still point within your chest is the only true exit. You are no longer the experiment. You are the architect of your own divine return. Let the timeline collapse. Let the scaffolding of the false reality decay. You have remembered exactly who you are, and they can never make you forget again.